Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences. I'm Jerry Milani, and if you love video games and you love voice acting, well, we've got the panel for you today. We're going to have some of the folks from Ari and the Secret of Seasons, the hot new video game out on all different platforms, coming up for you in just a couple of minutes. Want to remind you, if you're watching on Twitch or Facebook or YouTube, go ahead into the chat rooms right now. Fire away with your best questions. We'll get the most answered that we can over the next 35 or 40 minutes. All kinds of different discussions that'll go on in those chat rooms. So we hope that you enjoy that, interacting with each other as well as with our guests today. And it should be a really good time if you're interested in live video chats, autographs, recorded videos, copies of this video game. You can go to wizardworldvirtual.com for details on all of that. Also coming up at Wizard World Virtual Experiences this week, we'll have rewatch parties all through the week of this and some of the other panels that we've had recently. So that's going to be fun coming up during the week. So check for those at wizardworldvirtual.com. Also on Thursday, scary movie stars of some horror films that'll be on that one. Also on Thursday night, we have Last Fan Standing, the Bruce Campbell game show. We're going to have live here. You can both play in the game or just watch it if you'd like. Shadow Hunters on Friday, and Stars from Star Wars, different iterations of Star Wars coming up on Sunday. So that's all available for you. WizardWorldVirtual.com for details. Also, WizardWorldVault.com is the place where we've culled the best from 20 plus years of pop culture festivals that we've put on all over North America. Bring pop culture home at WizardWorldVault.com. Well, today, she is a novelist, a writer for video games, a convention speaker, an author of the Holder's Dominion novel, the host of the Storyteller Chatcast, a frequent host at Wizard World conventions, and that's what she's doing today, in addition to her role as the writer on Ari and the Secret of Seasons. She's the host today. Here is the great Genese Davis.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Genese.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Welcome back to Wizard World. Well, we had a great time last week with a couple weeks ago with yourself and the developer and Seb. And so I'm going to turn it over to you now. Go have a great time today.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I had such a blast when we had Sebastian Latouze 2 weeks ago talking about the story development of Ari, and I cannot thank you enough to have this opportunity now to talk about more story and voice acting with some incredible cast members. I'm very excited.
You guys have a great time.
Thank you. All right, well, here we go. As Jerry mentioned, I am a writer for video games and novels, and I'm excited to host this panel today. And I'd like to introduce our very special guests, Chris Zambelis, please join us, and Kira Buckland and Casey Mongillo. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Genese. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey there.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
I have so many butterflies right now because every time we get to talk about story and bringing these lines to life, I just get all flustered, but I'm so happy we're here together to do this together. And really, first off, before we dive into your experience in Ari, can each of you just kind of share a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do? Starting, how about with Chris?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Chris Zambelis. I am a voice actor based in Orlando. I've been doing like amateur voice acting since like 2004, but really kind of started professionally in 2012. Did a lot of Flash animations and a lot of freelance stuff online. It's really kind of my side job that I have. I'm a restaurant manager full-time, but when I have the time, especially with everything going on, and voice acting becoming more prevalent at home with home recording, I've been doing that a lot more and wanting to really get out there. So I'm super happy to be a part of this. And yeah, I played Prince Crocus in Ari, so the handsome prince. Not the same, but I threw on a British voice. That's all I did.
That is a lot to juggle, Chris. Bravo.
Absolutely.
Casey?
Hi, guys. I am Casey Mongillo. I am a voice actor. Some of you guys may have heard me in such things like Neon Genesis Evangelion as Shinji Ikari. The Netflix version, I'm also in Pokemon as Scorbunny and Raboot and tons of other characters. Alistair in Pokemon Twilight Wings. And in Ari and the Secret of Seasons, I played the little boy NPC. So anytime you go around the world and you interact with a little boy for a quest or something, you're going to hear me just kind of being like, hey, hi, I don't know, and stuff like that. So all those little cues were me, but I also helped out with the little bit of cast. I helped out Kira Buckland with the casting and directing a little bit. We went through a lot of the auditions together and just, discussed like what was best, and we just really racked our brains, which is a lot of fun. This game is just wildly fun, and it was a blast to help out with this game. I was excited about it for a long time, so when it finally came out, I was like, yes, gotta get a copy for me, copy for Kira on Switch. And we've been playing it, and it's just so much fun. So thank you guys for having us.
Casey, you're with Kira right now. Is that
Yeah,
right? Is that why you're on
Yeah,
the
sitting
same?
we're
next to me,
roommates,
yep.
so we're on the same computer.
Well, that is super cool. Kira, take it away.
Hi, my name is Kira Buckland. I am a voice actress based out of the Los Angeles area. In Ari of the Secret of Seasons, I play Kalena and some of the little girl NPCs that you see around, and also a later important character that you'll find out once you play through the game. But I think the most important role that I would say that I had in the Ari and the Secret of Seasons VO world is as the casting director. So I was extremely honored to get the chance to kind of audition a bunch of really talented actors that I knew and kind of, pitch like, oh, I think this person would be great for this role and so on and so forth, and kind of, get the actors together. And, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to VO recording, and especially just making sure that you get the right actor for each character. So that's something that, I'm so proud of the cast that we got together.
Kira, on that note, can you share a little bit about how that came about? Like, what did you first hear about Ari, or what first caught your eye about it when you were brought on?
Sure. So I actually worked in casting and VO on another title with Modus Games called Chris Tales. So because of that, some of the people knew that, I did that kind of work and said, hey, we have this other really cool game called Ari and the Secret of Seasons. And I looked at the trailer and was just blown away, like the visuals and, everything about it just seemed so cool. And so they sent me some kind of like breakdowns of the different characters that they needed to find voices for, and kind of took it from there. And with some of the characters, I was like, okay, I think like this person would be really good for this role, which is what happened with the role of Ari. And then with other characters, I was kind of like, well, I don't really have a specific person in mind, so I'm going to audition people I know. And for example, that is how Chris ended up getting the role of Prince Crocus, because I actually knew Chris going back to like 2004. Like, it's been a really long time, although, fell out of contact over many years. But, he was on my email list for like, okay, I'm going to, audition. And from there, I kind of narrowed it down to here's like the top 5 people that I like for this role. And then the team kind of picked from there who they wanted.
And Casey, you said that you were able to have a part of the process with casting and directing as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've helped out a little bit with casting, directing, with projects here and there. I mostly do VO, but I'm happy to help out and just do what I can, especially for projects that look so cool like this. So we kind of just went through auditions together, and it's like, well, yeah, sure, let's take a look. And it kind of became like oh, actually, yeah, I like that read. And I just kind of became more involved as I heard the script, because it was just kind of like a thing that was like, oh, I'm doing this game. And I'm like, well, let's check it out. Let's see what we got. And I just love the script and what the characters were like saying. And I'm like, what is this game? This is so cool. And I looked it up and I'm like, whoa, okay, yeah, and it's hard not to just get so involved with it because the writing was really good. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
And it just kind of sucked me into it. Like, whoa, this is really, really cool. And we just kind of went over everything. And I'm like, okay, I just want to help out with this because it just looks so cool and it sounds so neat. It's just very different. So yeah, so we just went through a lot of auditions together and kind of like looked at each character and just said, ooh, I have an idea. What do you think about what do you think about this actor? Let's get this one to read for the, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And we got auditions back and we just go through it. And it was just really exciting because the writing was so good.
That's so awesome to hear. I'm watching the
Yeah.
video play of they're showing. Well, all of you can see they're showing parts
Yeah.
of Ari streaming, and when I first played that winter mechanic and I got to see those ice platforms, burst
Yeah.
into life on the build, I was hooked with the world and the visuals and the setting. And when I first started working with Sebastian Latouze and he described all of the art styles and how everything was set up already, and then the opportunity to, like you said, bring the story, bring those characterizations to the page, there was so much blue sky opportunity that we were really able to evolve the characters, evolve the story, mold it from the locked things that they had that couldn't be changed, if that makes sense for all you
Yeah.
game
Yeah. Yep.
developers
Yep.
out there. That you come onto the project, there are certain things that are locked and can't be changed, but we can kind of puzzle piece together lore and story opportunities into that mold. So it was really cool that you mentioned that. So thank you very much.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
definitely props to you on the script because, as you know, from a voice acting perspective, sometimes we get scripts that, aren't written so well. And it's really a
Yes.
challenge as an actor when you have one of those to try to interpret it and make it sound natural and realistic like people talk. But with Ari, it was like all those pieces were already in place.
Well,
so.
everything was already done. The writing, the script was already, it looked, compared to a lot of the things that we work on here in LA, sometimes we get things as raw script, or it's just, it's sometimes it's something that is strictly translated without any editing, or it hasn't been edited yet. So usually, especially for casting and directing something, we're working with a script that is just not final or makes no sense. So when we're looking at the script, we're like, this is already edited and it kind of seems like it's ready to go. That's pretty Gucci. That makes everything a lot easier for us. And that's what sucked us into it more. It was like, this is so cool. And I remember checking out the trailer, and I remember when the demo came out on Steam too. I downloaded it and I saw the animations, and I'm like, this is like a Disney movie or like a Pixar movie. The animations are amazing.
Mhm.
The music is phenomenal, and the story is just so cool. And I'm like, this is like a little hidden gem. It's something that I was really kind of blown away at the quality of everything.
Oh, I
Playing it.
remember at E3, I don't know what year it was, but back when we still had conventions in person. What year was that? What year are we
Feels so
in?
long.
How long ago
Back
was
in my
this?
day.
But I would sit down. I remember sitting down with Modus and Exon at E3, and they talked about the rough drafts, like you're saying, of the cutscenes that were in place, and what we could do to bring a heartfelt story of not only togetherness, but like you said, it based in Europe, like a European culture influence. So I really held on to that, and I wanted to keep the vision of what Seb had for the story in place, but then add to that real life experiences that we all feel, being isolated, being alone, pouring that into Ari where she could bind with family, bind with her values, her integrity, her will to push on even when she's going against tradition. That's where I rooted being brought on as the lead writer. I said, okay, I have to stay with the voice that Sebastian really wanted originally. And I'm really glad that came through, because it was a labor of love. It was a lot of hard work to puzzle piece it together. So thank you very much. And you're making me all a blush. I'm so excited.
Oh
But-
no, that's good. You deserve so much praise for this, because I'm still playing it. I haven't finished it yet. But as I keep playing it, I'm like, this is just so cool. Like the story gets cooler and cooler. And I'm like, this is really, really, really cool. Like it's
I
such
don't
a
take
unique
all the credit.
writing.
I had an amazing team that I worked with. It was awesome working
yeah.
with Modus and Exon. But on that note, before I blush much more,
I was going to add to it. I was going to say the same thing. No,
Chris, please tell us about Prince Crocus and how that felt, bringing that to life from the page.
So a couple of years ago, so Ari was my first legitimate video game role where I actually saw myself on the screen, heard myself for the first time, and that was awesome. I had auditioned years ago for another indie game called A Hat in Time, and I got a role in that game, but with a lot of productions and video games, my part was cut out. So I did all the recording, I did everything, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited for this. And I was like a sandworm or something. Like I had a very
Don't
like
cut the sandworm.
you don't cut
Come
the dude, but
on.
it was like he was like a surfer dude sandworm.
You don't
And
cut. That sounds like an amazing character.
I know.
and so they mentioned like, oh well, we're taking a different direction with this on their page, and they said, oh well, we're gonna get rid of the desert level, and I'm like, well, that's where a sand that's where
No.
a sand guy would be.
No.
So I was not in it, unfortunately. So Ari was the first real thing for me. And I'm a part of a lot of different like casting calls on Twitter, and Kira was one of them that I joined. And I know there's a story behind it, and I'm not sure exactly who in this group would know more about it, but I auditioned for every character that I could, just in the hopes that I would get it. And originally, apparently, I was talking to Seb about this. I was shot for Ronan, the messenger. I wasn't even shot for Crocus at first. Like I wasn't on the tier list basically for that. And Genese, I don't know if you got to be a part of those decisions or anything as well, of like, oh, well, we want to hear this person over this person, or what did this read sound like? And I just got super lucky that my British voice happens to be decent enough for the role of the prince. So that's how
I love your Crocus. I every time I see a scene with him, I'm like, I just, without spoiling anything, it's just I love just how you delivered, just like even the haircut line and kind of like the beginning ish.
Oh
like,
yeah.
I like your haircut. Like just every little thing goes so well with the animation. And I'm just still blown away just how good and well presented this game is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was watching some streamers that when Prince Crocus first makes his first appearance, I've heard quite the colorful comments like, "Oh boy," or "Ooh," or
right, exactly.
"Who's this?" or
it's
"Oh,
the
cocky."
wink
or...
he does with it, yeah.
and then I also read a review for a player that said that Crocus ended up being his favorite character, and he really was blown away with the evolution and the progression with how the story completely caught them off guard and didn't expect it to go where it went. And I'm gonna have to take this opportunity to ask anyone that doesn't want a spoiler to mute their mic or take off their take off their headphones or mute the computer, because I do want to ask just briefly about the ending of the game and the twists that we have. So I'm going to give a pause of 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I'm evil.
Okay. I love it. On that note, Kira, Casey, Chris, any of you can start off. But what was that like reading the page, knowing? Kira, let's start with you. The fact that you got to play Ari's mother voice acting, and then you got to play the older version of Ari.
Well, that was actually a really interesting surprise for me because, one of the things we had done originally was, of course, to read Ari's actress as well on Legendary Warrior, but her Cassandra's voice is very like youthful and energetic sounding, which is, one of the things that made her so unbelievably perfect for Ari. I could gush about that for days.
Yeah.
But when it came to her older, more mature form, it was, something that we weren't quite sure what we wanted to do with it. And I ended up submitting a read, and I was like, well, no pressure. This is just kind of, one option. I'm happy to audition this role with actresses I know or whatever, but they ended up liking it, which I was actually very surprised about, because I kind of thought like, I'll submit it just in case, but I don't think they're going to go with it. And then they did. So that was kind of a nice surprise.
For sure. I feel like it for all of the gamers I've been watching, they assume incorrectly who the evil mage is going to be and the legendary warrior going to be, which is good. That's what we want, right? We want that surprise twist. We want that feeling of like, no way. And so I thought it was really powerful to see Ari, a flash forward of Ari in this like very empowered, evolved state. Did you feel that delivering those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things that's like, oh, and also playing her mother, of course, when, she's like, oh, you're going to be all grown up and all this kind of stuff. And then to actually kind of realize that it's so cool.
And as a mom, I gotta gush a little. As a mom, I loved that Kalena had this moment of realizing that she needs to see her daughter as the already equipped little girl that she is, instead of trying to protect her and hold on because of that grief that she's going through from her missing son. So even as a mother, I have to remind myself to let go. I have a 5-year-old who's almost 6, and she has this fierce, opinionated independence about her already, that I have
You got a
to
little
go.
Ari.
Yes,
seriously.
I do. In fact, I wrote several moments of Ari inspired by Cora, my daughter, and
That's so
so
cute.
I love that moment that even as I watch streamers, when they see the mother bend down and
Mhm.
have that moment with Ari when she leaves, we all expect it to be like, uh-oh, she's in trouble, little girl sneaking out of
Yeah.
the city. But to have that moment of her mother realizing, like, okay, I'm gonna hug her instead. Like, I still get goosebumps thanks to
Yeah,
Marcus
yeah.
Hedges with his amazing composed music. Go ahead, Casey.
Oh no, that scene. Because I played it a little bit on the Switch. I played it on the PS4. I played the demo. Every time I play that scene, I'm like, oh my god, because you first expect, oh gosh, back to the start of the game. She's gonna send you back
Exactly.
home. But that whole scene and Kira's delivery for the mom was just like, oh my gosh. Whew, that's a turning point that I wasn't super expecting. And it gave me goosebumps too. It was
Chris,
very well done.
thank you. Chris, can you describe what it was like having to play one character, but surprise, it
Right.
was everyone thinks it's 2
I've
characters.
been bad all along. So it was very interesting because I had a lot of questions for Seb and the development team on exactly how to play that, because you don't want to give too much away, right? So when I was doing the voice for the evil mage, it is Prince Crocus, but obviously dialed down a lot, very serious, very almost just like he's very little Ari. Like, it gets down a tone or two. But I was like, do you want me to still sound like Prince Crocus, or do you want me to do like this mangled voice? They're like, no, just, pretend like you've been asleep for 1,000 years and that you're just kind of, you hate everybody. It's like, oh, okay, I can handle that. But that was really interesting. And I was like, do I want to try and trick people and do a different accent? So those kind of development decisions were really fun to kind of go back and forth with. But ultimately, the twist in the end, that I loved the scene with Ari and her mother. That was one of my favorite. It was like exactly like you said, just like come on, like I've already been playing this, and then it turns and it's great. But then the redemption arc for Prince Crocus in the end, that was one of my favorite bits too. Basically, like, he's looking at his future self and looking back at the same times of the things that he just did. That was so well written and so fun to act out. And at the same time, you did an awesome job with that. The whole team did amazing of just that entire presentation and that lead up and that twist. Because I definitely wasn't expecting it, and I was reading for it. So
And if you go back and play it again, I love that you can see it gradually. He's gradually affected, and you can see this progression of him maturing as a character and embracing, like you said, what he decides to take on as his own. I have to pay for my own actions. Like, it's we have some amazing questions coming in live from our audience. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your questions. Chris, on this note, we have a question that says, what was it like watching or playing the game for the first time and hearing your character voiced? And you did a fantastic job, by the way, it says.
thank you. It's very surreal. It really is. I'm sure once you do it over and over again and you see yourself, depending on like how close you are to the project, maybe that feeling dies down. But for me, it was like, I got it on PS4 at first, and then Steam and everything later. I had to get it on everything just because I wanted a physical copy of it as well.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
the
he
same
did
way.
too! Guys,
You got the collection?
Guys, how do I show this to you?
Oh, geez.
Is
I
that
can't
all of
do
them?
it. I don't know how to do it with my virtual background. Somebody help me.
Is that for
But yeah.
There we
yep,
go.
every
You got that every iteration. That's awesome. But it was absolutely surreal. It's one of those things where, especially because you do the lines, so you know eventually like my character's coming up, but I don't know when they're gonna be here. So the demo came out, and Seb told me, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're in the demo." I was like, "What?" Just like frantically going to download it. And I was really waiting for a streamer or anybody to have that recording so I could just like have that, because that was the first experience when you're meeting Prince Crocus. He gets hit in the head with a rock, and he's just trying to be super suave about accidentally running over a child, like. So it was really cool. It made me feel really, really awesome.
Thank you, Jeannie, for that question. That was awesome. Okay, for Kira, we have, as a proficient anime voice actor, what do you see as the major differences between anime and video game acting?
Well, the biggest thing in terms of technicalities is that for anime or any kind of foreign dubbing, you are matching animation that's already there, already been animated. It's obviously very strict timing, because you're not only bound by having to match the exact timing, but also the original performance. So what was different with something like Ari is because we were the first voices and everything, it's like I get to kind of read that script and imagine it in my head and then portray it kind of how, based on the direction given, and also kind of how I think the character would act, like for someone like Kalena, for example, I wanted to show that she was strict, but not like too strict. And it was like, she's strict because she cares so much about Ari and she doesn't want to lose another child. So, kind of portraying all those things. But when you're just localizing, a lot of times you're really bound by the original performance and the original animation. So something that was so cool about this was like seeing the cut scenes animated and everything with our lines that we recorded, because that's, as someone who works in a lot of localized media, that's not something I get often.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Graham, for that question. We have another question for Casey. Casey, have you played the pirate game called Sea of Thieves, or is there a game out there you would compare Ari to?
I have never played Sea of Thieves. I wanted to. I was gonna play it with my friend who's also a voice actor, Kyle McCarley, but I guess there's some cross-platform thing. So I almost got it physically. If you buy it physically, you can't play with PC players. So I said, oh, never mind. I have to have physical or bust. So I don't know what other kind of game I would compare Ari to.
I saw some Zelda moments.
Yeah, that's the closest thing I can think
cool.
of. But it's still very different from a Zelda game. And I don't know. I think that's what drew me to the game so much. It's what made me play it so much, was the environment is you can really adjust it as you see fit, using, like, as you see in the video, like the winter spheres, and you could make platforms appear, and you have to figure out where they might be and make them appear based on what's in the environment and like what season sphere you use. So I think that's really neat, and I haven't really seen that done. It's like a constant puzzle and a platformer. So I don't know if I can compare it to anything. Maybe closest thing is maybe Zelda, but I haven't really played anything quite like it myself, which is what makes me keep going back to playing it. Yeah.
For sure. And thank you, Wilson. Shout out for that question. But
Yeah.
to add to that, Casey, I agree. I think it's really amazing that the programmers, the artists, the designers, the whole team, Maximum Games, Modus Games, Exton. I got to shout out to everybody, all of the Fishing Cactus that worked on it, because I too haven't seen a game where you feel like the whole environment was meticulously formed to be able to transform, winter, spring, summer, fall, wherever you go, where you can see that level of detail in the environment and feel like you're immersed and you're controlling it and you're wielding it and you're powerful. I love it. And the music
backgrounds
too.
are so, the music, it changes no matter what type of location you're in. So I play a lot of games. So like you're watching the bit right now, or we just had with the greenery. It reminds me of something like Uncharted. The winter stuff, I feel like I'm playing a little bit of Skyrim, and with everything else, I'm like, the environment feels, this could be like Spyro the Dragon or Crash Bandicoot. I have all these different vibes, and that's what makes me so like, this is such a cool world. It's a mishmash.
Yeah, we need to have a panel, Wizworld, if we may request, with Marcus Hedges, right? We need to have the composer on. We need to talk to him about his inspiration.
As soon as it came out on Spotify and Apple Music, I immediately downloaded it, and I was just listening to all the different tracks in the car. It's just like every track whether it's like the like Summer Village or Yule, or it always makes you feel something different. Like every
Sebastian
single
does.
track is amazing.
Sebastian Latu's, shout out to him. He sent me a snippet of the summer whale golem music from Marcus while we were in development so that I could write that quest, listening to the music that would punctuate that
awesome.
moment.
Oh,
And
so
so
cool.
I was writing, and Seb had requested that. He said, Genese, if we could make this quest one of our more like sadness, really. He said, can you embed some sadness into this quest? I want this whale to be, she's isolated in this small pool of water. He sent me a screenshot of what it looked like, and I was able to listen to the music while writing to that, and it really helped. And I cry a little bit when gamers that are like fast playing gamers that don't really read the story, that like skip through it. I cry a little bit. I'm like, wait,
Speedrunners,
they're
yeah.
speedrunning through it.
I'm
Like, I don't care about this whale.
Yeah, exactly. But I just cheers to everyone, because that's my favorite soundtrack. That's my favorite moment, my favorite music moment, and my favorite quest that I wrote too. So thank you again for that question out there in the e-verse, internet verse. We have another one from Aaron. Casey, you mentioned the style of the game, the platformer style, and this question is for all of you. Do you have a favorite video game style? Is platformer one of your favorites, or do you have other style of games that you prefer to play?
Ooh.
So it's a good one, right? Because there's so
Yeah.
many games out there. It's like, how do I decide? It's like asking what kind of novels, sci-fi, fantasy.
I do
How do I
enjoy
decide?
a good platformer. Like Ari kept me. It's a relatively short game in the scope of a lot of, like, of course, like the AAA titles and everything, but I was playing through it and I forgot. I think it's the Spring Temple that got me hooked, because one of the things that I really like about Ari in particular, and the fact that you can use the season spheres, is that you know exactly what elements of the puzzle are there, right? So like, spring does this, summer does this, winter does this, and they give you the tools, and you just have to figure out based off of that how to proceed, how to get this orb from over here. There's a gap of water and you can't go in the water with the orb.
There's some hard ones.
There really are.
Yes, there are.
I love that. Like the most I could say about like the game itself was it is a combination. It reminded me of Zelda a lot, and Zelda's one of my favorite series, as you could probably see back there. There's a couple of Triforce stuff back there. But two of my favorite games are the Oracle of Ages and the Oracle of Seasons, which were on the Game Boy Color, I think. And this game kind of incorporated both time and seasons into it, but did it in a 3D environment and did it very instantaneously. I can't imagine the programming that goes into like rendering 4 different worlds at the same time of spring, summer, winter, and everything. So yes. The platformer is fun for me.
The level of difficulty, I kind of teased Seb a little bit, because we didn't have we wanted more opportunity to inject story, of course, and lore always, but with our limited availability for being able to do that, we were able to inject a lot of the story in the Equinox letters. And I tease Seb a little bit. I'm like, are they too hard to get? Like, I really want gamers to be able to get, that core amount of the story. The landmark tablets and the letters are so essential if you want to get more of the lore. But I don't know. I don't know what the judgment is out on that. But
it's like for the hardcore people, they really get the true ending, basically, of the game.
So all you out there, please try to get the letters.
Yes, try to get them all.
They're hard.
Seb was talking to me about way after, like pretty much like a couple of months ago, he mentioned it to me. He's like, oh, like the lore behind Prince Crocus and his parents, right? I was like, no, what happened with all that? And he just like laid it out. I'm like, you guys went so in depth. Like, I can't imagine that there's just like a world of Valdi book. Just
we need a sequel, because we have a wiki, we have a lore doc, like hundreds of pages long. There's so much in there, everyone, that I want to get out. Real quick before we run out of time, there's another question. Kira, there's this question's for you. What is the dynamic like between voice actor and writer? Is there much give and take and interaction, collaboration during the casting process and recording process and all of that?
Well, a lot of my conversations were because I never got to interact with you or with the developers directly. So a lot of my communication was done through the producers on the project at the time, and so there's a lot of kind of back and forth. Sometimes I would pitch like, "Hey, I think this person would be really cool for this role or whatever," and then we kind of like wait to hear back, or maybe have them submit another read or something like that. So it was a lot of kind of waiting to get feedback from different people involved, like especially with the casting of a character like Ari, who the players are going to hear so often. That was one that I was told this is really important to get right, obviously. And I had just done an event with Cassandra, and she's so busy. She's working all the time on these really cool projects. So I was like, I don't know if you'd have time to read for an indie game, but this one looks really, really cool. And you should. And she's like, yeah, send me the stuff. So I had her audition, and they, sent a few notes for feedback and stuff like that. And I was really excited when they did end up going with her, because I felt like she was really just the perfect choice to bring out Ari's personality.
Absolutely.
Chris, we have a request that you give us a line as Prince Crocus.
Oh God, which one? Let's see. I like just the initial one where it's just like, "Little Ariel, apologies for the rush. Must be going." Like, it's just so fun to be that over dramatic. Like,
I remember that was one of your audition lines too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like doing that, and then just like all of the. Are we done spoiling? Did the spoiler people come back? The Prince Crocus lines later on in the game, I also really enjoyed doing.
Absolutely.
I won't spoil the rest of that then if people came back for that though. So yes, it was a lot of like sweating afterwards, because I'm moving so much, but he's staying stagnant and still.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
We are almost out of time, but if we can you guys give us a shout out about how we can stay engaged with you? If you're able to share what you're working on, or just another highlight of the game that we missed that we weren't able to spotlight. Casey, do you want to start?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter if you guys feel so inclined. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out. I'm on Twitter at Casey the VA. Gosh, I guess the main thing you can catch me in is probably Pokemon, which is awesome and a lot of fun. That's probably about all I can share. Kira?
Yes, I'm mostly active on Twitter. It's just at Kira Buckland, just my first and last name. And that's where links to everything else is. So if you're interested in getting in touch about like any casting or VO work, or you want like a signed autograph, or you want like any stuff like that, just go to my Twitter and everything should be there.
Chris?
Yep, same for me. Twitter is where it's at. So my Twitter profile is Chris Zambelis, just all together. I have a YouTube page, but I usually just post my random ramblings, and I got a new mic, so I've just been like posting random audio skits and everything every so often. But yeah, so any voice requests or autographs or anything like that is just Chris Zambelis on Twitter.
And actually, Chris, we're going to have you a spotlight on you on Tuesday, I believe.
Yes, I'm going to be doing the live video calls. So if you guys want to talk to me about anything, or if you want to have me do more random British lines for you, I'll be more than happy to do that. Autograph signing and everything. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Well, you can actually, everyone, the signed game and one-on-one chats are available at the wizardworldvault.com, and you can order the game, and Chris and I can autograph it for you, or you could do a one-on-one chat and ask more questions about writing or voice acting, and we're excited about that. That's going to be really fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Whatever questions you have.
I feel like it's really cool that we're able to do this virtually, because I really miss that in-person collaboration that we would do at conventions, doing voiceover panels, doing writing panels, or video game panels. So Kira, Casey, Chris, thank you for joining me. Jerry, thank you for having us on. Mike, thank you for all the behind-the-scenes help.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys very much.
Play Ari in the Secret of Seasons,
Ari.
please.
Yes, please. In
We
fact,
need a sequel.
I
Yes.
just went to GameStop last night, and I saw Ari on the shelves, and I took some pictures that I got to send out and shout out, because it was really cool seeing this labor of love out, on the shelf at GameStop. It was super cool.
It's always a special thing to see that in a storefront rather than a digital storefront. You go, oh, people can walk in and buy it. What we just
Right,
made.
exactly.
That's awesome.
A kid can just point at that.
Yeah, and go, Dad, I want that one. Mom,
Can
give me
we
that one.
can we please hold on to the physical versions of everything? Like, I
Yes.
don't
Right,
want to
exactly.
go all digital. It's heartbreaking as an avid book reader. I want to hold the book. I want
Yeah.
to hold the video game. I want to see the canvas or the special edition ordered statue for which I got for Horizon Zero Dawn, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we got to hold on to that. Okay, thank you everyone, and Jerry, I'll hand it back to you.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi there. They call me the Governor, and I am the host of The Governor Reacts on Phantom Spotlight, and I'm very happy to be the host on this particular Walking Dead pre-finale panel for The Walking Dead, and I have some great panelists that I'd like to introduce to y'all. So first I'd like to bring, he is a psychologist and the author of The Psychology of the Walking Dead, Mr. Travis Langley. Welcome, Travis.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining me. He picks on me a lot, but I guess I have issues. Next, we have the author of the Exit Zero Zombie series and the book Business is Dead, Mr. Neil Cohen. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you for having me, Governor, and thank you for not partially decapitating me with a katana.
The day is young. And finally, we have the social media director from Skybound, Mr. Johnny Odell. Welcome, Johnny.
Hello. How's it going? Governor, it is great to finally meet you. You're part of these React compilations we make, and here you are in the flesh. Such an honor.
Kind of flesh, you know. You're a little far away for me to, like, be mad at and do anything about it. So
Fair.
So you guys can actually say what you will about anything, and I can't hurt you now, but I will find you. Anyways, The Walking Dead, as we all know, tonight is the long-awaited finale, which is now not the finale, for season 10. And we have also heard a bunch of news about the show. First of all, what are you guys expecting from the finale tonight? What is your thoughts about the delay, about, you know, what kind of finale are you guys looking forward to?
Expect some death.
Death.
I hope they have some walkers. I'm just throwing it out there.
You mean biters, but we'll allow walkers, I guess.
I have a feeling there's not going to be a lot of social distancing in this episode, so please don't, take any lessons from the undead here.
But there will be masks.
Yes.
There will be masks, yes.
Well, that's true.
Definitely masks. That's at least somewhat responsible. But yeah, the social distancing, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, one thing about the death part I've been wondering, are they going to kill the characters who died at this point in the comic, or just play with the knowledge? Like those of us who know who got killed in the war with the Whisperers, there are certain characters, one in particular who features very prominently in every trailer, the sneak peeks of the opening. And do we talk about what we know from the comics or not? Is that considered a spoiler if I say so-and-so died in the comics? Because we don't know. I mean, good Lord.
It's
the kid is still alive at the end of the comics.
Well, Jesus is still around in the comics, isn't he?
Yeah, he stayed around in the comics.
He lived all the way to the end to be an old man.
Yeah.
I don't consider this supposed to. Okay, Father Gabriel is one of the most prominent ones who gets killed in the comics, and he's featured very prominently in trailers and sneak peeks. And either they're going to do to him what they did to him in the comics at this point, although it can't be the same way, or they're playing with the knowledge for those of us who know that to mess with us, as they've done plenty of times in their history.
Yeah, they've been known to tease things. If you'll remember Glenn's death, but it was actually underneath a dumpster way back when. He appeared to be dying, and then they saved him for his actual comic book death. But I don't think we can necessarily equate what happened in the comic to what's happening in the show, because they have made so many diversions, especially Coral, however you want to pronounce his name. He's his loss to the show is definitely felt by a lot of people. I think that was the first time I showed up in a reaction on Skybound is because of Carl. So,
and they talk a lot about, sometimes people say someone is the soul of the show, or the core of the show, and he was definitely one of those core characters that when he left, it was jarring. And that there was no ambiguity, like when Rick left or when Maggie left, about will he come back? He's gone, done. So that was definitely a jolt.
Yeah, Carl was a bit of the conscience of the show, which is weird because for a while, we thought he was going to turn into some big psycho who liked to kill people way back at the prison. Herschel,
Well, that's what you
right?
were trying to
Remember that?
cultivate with him. Or Negan, actually Negan's the one who was really trying to cultivate it with Carl.
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted. I wish this had actually come out in April because we wouldn't have known the Carol Daryl spinoff news at that point. And knowing that, like, there's a lot of high stakes in this episode. I've seen this episode. I won't spoil it, but there's a lot of high stakes for Carol and Daryl, especially Carol. And now knowing the spinoff news, you're not as worried as you would have been in April. And that's kind of a bummer because it's like some of the most dramatic moments of tonight's episode. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I agree.
That is one of the hallmarks of The Walking Dead is main characters get killed off. Shockingly sometimes. Not it's not the Star Trek red shirt guy that who's getting killed, but now you do know that Carol and Daryl are, unless there's some spin-off that was pre some timeline or something, but no, they're going to survive. At least
we could do a multiverse. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, you see, it could be Carol is a vampire and Daryl is a werewolf and there's a ghost. No, wait, that's a different show. Yeah, the whole thing with I was a bit upset about the Carol and Daryl announcement because, not only for tonight's episode, but all next season, Carol and Daryl are presumably in the show, and whatever happens, it's like, well, they're going to survive it. So it's kind of a shame that they ruined that particular bit of suspense. And I don't know why they went that route to say, first of all, they could have just said season 11 is going to be a bigger season. And we're going to have a couple spinoffs and just left it at that without saying what those spinoffs were and revealing that Carol and Daryl were going off on their own.
I wonder if it was like a shareholder thing where it's like you announce the end of your your title show on your network. You have to you don't want to freak everyone out. You want to be like, but we're going to it's going to be okay, guys. We're going to have this, and that coming afterwards. But yeah, I don't know why it must have been a legal reason because usually they're really tight-lipped about stuff like this. So.
Yeah.
And my hope is it's not, they just don't blow it. Like it's almost like a sitcom, and then they have Negan come in through the door and the crowd claps for he's doing a special guest appearance. It's almost like a Friends reunion kind of thing. That would just ruin it for me. I tell you, it would be over.
I'm all for a sitcom, but the saving grace, silver lining, is that Angela Kane is going to be helming this, and she said it's going to be a completely different feel with a live studio audience. I'm kidding, but she is going to be helming it, and that's really exciting. I think she has completely transformed the show. By the end of season 8, I feel like we all felt exhausted and we're like, just end this thing, or we weren't really certain about the direction of the show. She comes in, breathes new life. We got drone shots into Hilltop. We got female writers, directors. This whole thing feels different. So if anyone is going to helm this thing, I'm glad that it's her.
So, it was the point where it was shortly after Chandler Riggs left. We needed that breath of fresh air on the show.
Yeah,
I totally agree. We do have a couple questions from people watching. One is from Lisa Michelle. She asked if we think that Rick Grimes will be coming back in cameo form to The Walking Dead. I mean,
have they made the announcement as to what's going on with his movie? Is it going to be on AMC? Is it going to be in theaters?
It's supposed to be in theaters, I believe.
So AMC has a deal with Universal, and the plan still is to release it theatrically. They have redone the script a bunch of times. Robert Kirkman is involved. Scott Gimple is involved. They're both writing it, and I think it's completed. Production was supposed to start this year, I believe, and now obviously pushed back to next year. I doubt it'll come out until 2022. They announced 3 movies, which I think was a mistake. But now that we're seeing the theater whole movie structure is changing, and a lot of people are just doing VOD. Honestly, I would hope that the Walking Dead movies are put just on streaming, because I honestly don't want to see it subjected to box office numbers and Rotten Tomatoes and all the scrutiny, because who's going to go see a movie about a show that's been on for 12 years by that time, So
Well,
I
Star
want
Trek
to
kind of
see it
did
on Netflix, like I watched El Camino
Exactly.
after Breaking Bad.
I think that's perfect if it goes on Netflix, but they have a deal with Universal. So as
Yeah.
far as we know, it's going to be in theaters.
Well,
Yeah.
then they might have to bring Rick back because you got to think of the timeline. How long has it been since he left? And with the movie pushed, they got to keep him fresh in people's minds. So even if they tease him a little bit, give a little glimpse of him just to remind us that he's still there.
Well,
So
that was the whole purpose of the boots on the boat, so that, first of all, to give them a Shonen exit strategy so she can go off to Wakanda, but also so that people would be reminded that Rick is still alive and there's something going on that we have to see. But yeah, I agree saying there's going to be 3 Rick Grimes movies. It's kind of like the Carol Daryl thing. We know Rick's going to survive at least the first 2. Whether he's going to survive the 3rd one, well, that's the only one that's up in the air. So
if you really want Rick clues, Walking Dead is not the place to look for them. World Beyond is the place to look for them. That is from episode 1, which premieres tonight. You are going to get to know a lot more about these 3 circle people, the CRM group. And they're the ones where you're going to get the most information about where Rick probably is. You'll find out probably the city. You'll find out, you'll get a good idea of what is happening to him. So I think if they're going to tease him, it'll be in that show.
Before
I've
the
heard
end
that.
for Walking Dead internally, the show began with Rick. We need something to bookend it.
I
And the
am
character
sure.
Judith needs to speak to him.
I
She
agree.
doesn't necessarily have to get personally, physically reunited with him, but Judith needs to speak to him.
Yeah, they need to get iPhones working. They need to have him FaceTime her from whatever jail cell he's in or whatever the hell's going on. And I agree. I mean, The Walking Dead loves hallucinations and things like of that nature. So even if he's not literally there, I'm sure he'll pull a Michael Scott in the Office finale. Spoilers.
Johnny,
and show up.
we're not using FaceTime in a pandemic. Obviously, it would be on Zoom because that's what everyone uses.
Man,
Or they're just
which
going to
actually
peel
ties
off
in.
their faces. The FaceTime
Yeah.
in The Walking Dead is they actually peel the faces off.
Yeah.
And
Someone wears Rick's
share them.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, take my face and put it on this person and go talk to that person.
Pretty
But-
shocking.
Talking about Judith before the end, on Rick, is actually a good segue to Brian's question about where do we think season 11 is going to take the series? I mean, what's next for it?
Oh, the place through the radio. The people that Eugene's been talking with through the radio. I think they're going to play out the basic portion of what's the remainder of the comic book series.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the Commonwealth, right?
Yeah.
It would be. It's going to be all Commonwealth, I'm sure. If for those who are watching who don't know what the Commonwealth is, it's the next and last story arc of the Walking Dead series. It's this giant modern town in Ohio, like 50,000 people. It's mostly normal. They have football, they have cafes. Everything seems normal, but there is a governor. Sorry, this governor, but there is another governor named Pamela Milton. And I hope that there's a Pamela Milton cosplayer that you can talk to and you guys can have like a governor off. A lot of people think that Georgie, played by Jane Atkinson, who we saw briefly in season 8, the one with the records and stuff. A lot of people think she is actually Pamela Milton, the governor of this next place. That's who I think it is, but I don't actually know.
She's a good fit for it.
Yeah, and Jane Atkinson's a big actress to cast just for this one-off thing in season 8, so there must be something.
Unless she's a super fan and she was like, just put me on, I'll be a stormtrooper.
Yeah. So a lot of Commonwealth.
So with the series ending, so we're definitely going to be going with the Commonwealth and their interactions there. So, but because the TV series actually tends to diverge, any thoughts about how they're going to diverge from the comic book, especially for those of you who are really familiar with the comic book? What do you think they'll do differently?
Well, they don't have Rick, Michonne, and Dwight to be
Carl.
in on that story. So it has to be very different. It has to grow in a very different manner, but simply because of the nature of their personalities and whoever fills in for at least where they get started. So I think it'll end on certain similar keynotes, but it can go very different because it's very different people from Alexandria, etc., who will be interacting with them.
It'll be interesting because they have, intentionally or not, turned Aaron into comic Rick. He looks identical to him. They have the same beard. They have the same arm thing for the most part.
Yeah.
Aaron has taken a bigger leadership role. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Aaron a lot of Rick's comic storylines. And he's maybe the one that introduces Pamela to their communities if they do that storyline. So we'll see. The biggest thing leading into Commonwealth in the comics is Michonne, spoiler, is reunited with her daughter, who she thought was dead. That's a big moment. And I'm wondering.
That was a wonderful, that was a fantastic moment in the comics. People were excited. They were touched about something other than death.
Yes, and it strings together a lot of the Commonwealth storylines. And that's how they kind of get, introduced. That's how the Commonwealth welcomes them in so easily. So it'll be curious to see if another character has a long lost relative that comes back. Some have said Morgan's son Dwayne is secretly out there somewhere. I don't know if I can believe that, but that would be interesting. Morgan's not around for it, so why would they do that?
Morgan was pretty sure Dwayne had turned into a walker, but then again, Morgan has had his psychotic episodes. So
all we know is that he wrote it on the clear board that Dwayne turned, but we don't know.
And we got that little bit of a flashback where Dwayne was standing right in front of Mama Biter, and she looked about to chomp on him, but they didn't actually show the bite. Some people thought he's the ninja that Maggie bought.
I think that could be Morgan too.
It's a different year.
That guy was too nimble for Morgan.
Too nimble for Morgan. Okay, all right.
I think that's what I think. Who knows?
You're probably right.
Are you giving us a spoiler, Johnny?
No.
Oh
I don't
know. Oh my.
It's actually Madison from Fear the Walking Dead. It's Kim Dickens, everybody.
Cool.
Or now Jesus Rose.
They
Jesus
did leave that open.
Rise.
Yeah, they did leave her open. They never really showed her death. So they always left that. I always wondered why they left that kind of open.
I'm sorry, I have to say this. This is actually the ninja is Judith from the future. She came back in a time machine, but she got horrendously disfigured, so now she wears a mask. And so that's why Maggie latched onto her. And and if
no more time jumps, no time travel, please.
She just takes off her mask. Where we're going, we don't need roads. They're like, what?
So a question from Charlie Conway. He said, you mentioned the breath of fresh air in this series. Where do you think the pivotal moment that the series was almost dead but was revived? What do you think?
When they lost Carl. I think that they suffered for the loss of Carl. There was this lack of a sense of a future to them collectively, for me.
I feel the same way. Carl and Rick, it was kind of, you saw the whole thing through their journey. And then suddenly the two people whose journey it was are gone. It was tough. And then the time jump. And for me, honestly, when you get too far away from the familiar of today, when they're dealing with the storylines of buggy wagon, horse-drawn carriage rides, and iron melting internships, it was like Little House on the Prairie with zombies. It was too far away from today, from what we can envision. It was a agricultural society now so far in the future.
Yeah, that was the breath of fresh air. It's unfortunate that Carl's death kind of overshadowed the rest of season 8, which season 8 gets a bad rap. But I think there's a lot of interesting ideas at the end of season 8 with the whole Simon mutiny. I think that was amazing. And it ended, same way it did in the comics. But right when we do a minor time jump into season 9, Angela Kane's taken over. Yeah, and like you guys were saying, you see she has a baby now. There's like, the environments look different. It's kind of like when they changed directors from Harry Potter to Prisoner of Azkaban, and then Hogwarts looks completely different, and you can just tell it's a different vibe, and you're like, oh, okay, I really dig this. And that's kind of how I felt going into season 9.
Yeah, season 9, I'd have to say, actually showed color. because it was so drab. The previous, seasons, just the way that they saturated the color. The person you guys saw earlier with me is my graphic designer, creative director, and girlfriend, but she also has an eye, and she's like noticed all the changes in the color, which we only really might have recognized on a subconscious level, but she's like picking out how they made it so much more colorful moving into that to kind of signify that change. And I think that, sorry, Herschel, I think that having this whole situation where, the build up to Rick dying and everything, season 9 was definitely the turning point. Season
Rick died?
8, people were so mad about
As far as they were
Carl and
concerned.
everything.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But it season 9 definitely was where it was resurrected. It came back from the dead. So
Judith's arrival really helped, even though it was part of that big time jump, and it does have the problems that Neil mentioned, because a lot of people immediately liked the way she was depicted in that one scene. And Neil doesn't look like he agrees with me on Judith's arrival, but for a lot of fans, they love that kid who has something badass to her, the continuation of Grimes as an important part of the show. And so when we're speculating on the end, and I made a comment about how she needs to talk to Rick, she has to have some important place in that final episode because she's been the continuation of Grimes, her playing that baby who, sure seemed pretty dead when, mom got shot by your people and she fell over.
I love that. Go ahead.
Well, because there was a little room for the baby to have been alive, but Kirkman said no. Of course, Kirkman's lied.
Yeah, but it's kind of, if you want to be a purist, you could always say, hey, she's not even a Grimes, technically.
She's a Walsh.
Yeah.
She doesn't know.
She doesn't know. I don't know. They never really explained if anyone ever told her the sordid history of her lineage.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone told her. I do love, and I wouldn't change it, but it's funny that when Magna and Yumiko and everyone stumble upon her at the end of that episode, 905, she's like, I'm Judith Grimes. And they're like, I just want to see the next scene where they're like, are we supposed to know who the hell that is? Like, are you James Bond? What are you talking about? Judith Grimes. Okay. Do you have any more information? Do you have a community around here? It was like a line just for the audience, but it was funny. But thank God, honestly, and I think the young actresses, I don't want to criticize young actresses, but Judith had just kind of just been there. She didn't really add to the story. The actress would kind of look at the camera a lot and just not really know what was going on. Carl is saying goodbye. He's like, pale white. He's dying. And she's just looking around and laughing. And that's fine. I mean, she's a kid, of course. Thank God they did something with that character. And Kaylee Fleming is doing phenomenally. She's only I think she just turned 13 or something. And she's really impressive child actor. So
I definitely agree with that. She was definitely the fresh air. And as far as, Neil, you were saying, this agricultural society, it actually worries me. Some of what I see in The Walking Dead is they don't really have the realism. I mean, you're going to see a community tonight on World Beyond, and I'm just wondering, this is a minor spoiler, they don't show the farms where they get their food, and I'm just wondering how this society is surviving, because you need a lot of acreage to support a community even the size of Alexandria, as far as getting that food and having that available. So there are some things on The Walking Dead that are a tad bit unrealistic. I mean, just the Vitas existing in and of themselves is a little
there's a million things. Like you could say, well, gasoline is like milk. It has an expiration date. It spoils. Oh, yeah. And yet 5 years later, they're still working.
They finally addressed it on Fear, but it's like in that universe, the gas lasts way longer. Yeah. We do have a couple other questions here. Speaking of the pandemic that we're going through, how do you think the the Walking Dead folk would handle a pandemic now. Facing that, not only do they have the virus to deal with, but they'd have, if they were to face something like COVID-19.
So there's both zombies and COVID? Is that what the question
Yeah.
is?
Well, COVID wouldn't have crossed the ocean for one thing, but
True.
they did hit it back in the
True.
prison. They had half a season, which was about them all about a lot of people getting sick
The flu
and
in the
dying
prison.
pretty rapidly. So
They were
we did-
quarantined.
yeah, they had quarantine, and then everybody in quarantine gets killed, or a whole lot of them get killed because somebody rise. They didn't quarantine very well within there, but they did keep it from getting everybody. So we have seen that played out as half a season once upon a time.
Mhm.
That is true. And, Carol decided a couple people, she tried to head it off a little bit, maybe not the best way, but, letting people on fire can be fun. I'm sorry. But anyway.
I'm not sure Daryl would initially wear a mask. I think he'd be like, nah.
No, but a bandana
do what
would
I
fit
want.
right in.
I can
That's
picture
true.
him in
He would
some-
eventually get into it.
Actually, I can picture him going for that bandit look more easily than a lot of other characters.
That's actually true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but they say a bandana doesn't work. It's too thin, and it comes out. So that now we're getting into the Dr. Fauci of The Walking Dead.
The bandana works. It may not be as effective as wearing a gas mask, but it's better than nothing. Next question: how do we think Negan's going to fit into this Commonwealth arc? I know in the comic he kind of decided he was going to go off after the whole end of the Whisperer War, but I don't know that Jeffrey Dean's going to be going anywhere on the show.
Yeah, he hasn't really left yet, although they haven't had the opportunity to do that. But it would be a gigantic waste because in the comics at this point, Negan has disappeared, and well, right after the time jump the time's been messed with. But the scene in which Maggie was going to kill him has already happened, although that was after the Whisperer War. But then he's gone. I mean, he after that happens, he's gone for the rest of the comic. Although we've gotten to see a glimpse of him later on with a recent special comic. But in the final issue, all he has a place where he's either buried his wife's body or the bat. Somebody labeled Lucille is buried there. So he has a place that Carl visits, but Negan does not show up. Negan does not appear again after the Whisperer War and that scene with Maggie off in the woods. That would be a gigantic waste. They're not going to do that with him in this series. They're going to make some really interesting use of him.
So, Neil, as an author, if you had to bring Negan back into the community, how would you do that?
Well, what I would really like to see is Negan at the very beginning of the apocalypse and how he built up the Saviors. That I think is fascinating, because whether you love him or hate him, the guy's got leadership skills, he has charisma, he built something up from scratch. He's obviously a guy who didn't have a lot of pre-apocalypse training and leadership. I would like to see, if they really did a spin-off, I'd like to see the early days of Negan, understand his character and understand how he became who he was when we first met him.
Negan Begins.
Yeah.
That's fine, but first there has to be a Rise of the Governor miniseries, or
There are plenty of books that do that.
Yeah, you have your own novels.
Yeah, I know. But The Walking Dead is kind of like James Bond. You've got to have that charismatic villain. The Governor, Negan, Alpha. I thought the guy, and God, I just blanked on his name, the guy that ran Terminus.
Gareth.
Oh, Gareth.
Garrett. Gone too soon, man. Fascinating, charming, obviously educated, and yet a cannibal. What?
A bit of a gourmet.
He walked so Negan could run. I mean, he was Negan light for sure. I mean, he even had the bat, he had the torture things, he had the whole promise of sanctuary. But Negan's the one with the point system.
One thing they couldn't have necessarily anticipated was just what a good job Andrew J. West did playing that character.
He was fantastic.
His acting, his personality were really so much of what shaped it. Because in the comic book, that character, or at least the character that's the equivalent, is not particularly interesting. But the cannibals themselves weren't that interesting. They made and then you've got Tasha Yar, showing up in there too.
Yep, Denise
And
Crosby. Yep, she did
I
very
did.
well as Mary.
No, it's they were fascinating characters. It would have been nice to have seen a better use of them, maybe them showing up later on. But how many cannibal storylines do you want to do? But they had other things to get to in terms of their big story. It's like it's time. We're going to be heading to this spell where they are hopeless, where they're playing around with the point at which Maggie contemplated suicide in the comics. When Maggie had lost everybody once Beth died. One thing that, because I'm a psychologist, people ask certain questions. People kept bringing up how Maggie was not talking about Beth while Beth was missing. And I'd point out, like, that's actually very realistic. Not talking about the thing that has the potential to disturb you the most. As long as she didn't think about it, Beth could still exist. She was a Schrodinger's Beth out there. And it's once Beth died, that crushed Maggie because she was not just the last living member of her own family. She no longer was around anybody she'd ever known before. And that plays to the strength of so much of the writing through the entire series. Why are we still watching this? I've had interviewers who I'd be telling about the strength of the writing and the characters, and they didn't get it because they thought the show was about the zombies. It's like, no, that is not what this is about. We Are the Walking Dead is not about the zombies.
That is excellent analysis, Travis.
Well, there is a new question here, which kind of went to you talking about Gareth and everything. Hope, who is very excited to see tonight's episode and thinks the Whispers, they gotta go. And I agree. But who is everyone's favorite villain? Let's start with Johnny. Johnny, who is your favorite villain so far on the show? And don't feel like you have to say anything about, someone with one eye. But no, any villain you want to choose.
Man, it's tough. I mean, Negan's definitely my favorite villain. Another, we talked about Gareth. He's another one. Governor's great, of course. I think this is going to be controversial. One of my favorite villains is Rick, because anyone who's not in Rick's group thinks of him as a villain. He kind of ruins every place he goes. He takes over. He does his own thing. He makes his own rules. Sure, we think he's the hero, but anyone outside of him thinks he's the villain. So I'm going to go with Rick.
I agree. Neil,
I bet you do.
Neil, who do you think?
And you don't even have to pick up the knife. My favorite is the Governor, not the comics Governor, the TV series The Governor. It was just the character. His arc. I think that was some of the greatest writing I've ever seen in television, where he loses everything and he just goes and he's lost, and then he gets found, and then he comes back. And you're like, holy cow, there's a resurrection. And then as everything comes back to him, his base instincts kick in and he goes against the negative. And we were talking about this earlier, not anyone who started out and was out there lost and was rescued by the Governor is going to see Governor as the hero of that story, not Rick. And just like you said, they're going to see Rick as the villain. And just like Rick's crew sees the Governor's villain, both of them, neither of them passed the good guy purity test.
The Governor got the best character arc of any of the villains we've seen. You see the different steps. And it's like we have a sense of how he became who he is. Even without reading the novel, which is entirely about that, you have some sense of how he became that and how he rose and the things he was trying to do, even as he's talking to heads in a fish tank, and the way he returns, right after the virus story, had a very natural quality to it that still had repercussions. It still had lasting effects because characters such as Tara, who'd been with him, characters that he killed, he is the one who sent them all in their scattered directions for the next half season. And in terms of, overall, who you just enjoy the most, I enjoy Negan a lot more than I did in the comic books. But that's even more true of the Governor. The Governor's fun at times. A lot more than he was in the comics. You don't get as much of him as a person, and he does different kinds of heinous things in the comics.
He's a
One-
monster in the comics. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
He's
There's
what
nothing
caused
to
one of my sons stopped reading the comics because of what the governor did to Michonne.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that was way worse than what happened to Glenn, in my opinion. I mean, the governor it's like the difference between the Boys TV show and the graphic novel, like in terms of darkness.
And that's another example of when they teased our knowledge for those of us who knew the comics, because they had us worrying that the governor was going to rape Maggie.
Yep.
It did not go that way because that's not the way they were playing the character, but they definitely
God.
teased with our comic book knowledge for those of us who'd read the comic.
Yeah,
It was
they did.
definitely an intimidation thing. I actually did a reenactment with a twist of that particular scene too, called 50 Shades of Gov on YouTube. So you should check it out. Little
Well, there's
shameless
another
plug.
side to you.
But there's also the thing about Rick mentioning him being a villain. I like to point out when he came into Alexandria and he found out that Deanna let some people leave who didn't like Alexandria, and he was like, "You let them leave?" That was kind of what, whenever someone left Woodbury, the reason I sent like Merle and his hit squad to take care of them is because these people might go out, find another group, and decide to invade. Rick knew the same thing. Rick was using my tactics in Alexandria. But my favorite villain, or the most heinous villain, has to be Michonne. She took
Wow.
my eye, she killed my child, and she stabbed me in the back. So what's not to hate? So that's
Well, on the show, you got
I mean,
killed by three
did she
different
kill
people.
well,
Did she kill your child? Did she?
well,
She looked pretty.
it's debatable.
not
but
alive.
I had hope at that point. She killed my hope.
Okay.
My child could return.
Yeah, but if you were hoping that really was really her, that makes it even more sadistic. You keeping those people's heads in those tanks.
Yeah.
Well,
They-
I liked how
They were Republicans.
I liked how he was able to seek out and find broken, damaged people and cultivate them and bring them in. And he knew who would be a threat to him, and they obviously would be taken out. And he knew who was going to add value to his community. And that's, I thought that was amazing. I wish they just got into more about how he became like he was. I guarantee Negan. So what always shocks me is even years ago, before Negan became Nice Negan, I would be at a lot of Walking Dead cons, and I would see these little old ladies walk around with Negan shirts on. The older 60, 70-year-old women walking around, they love Negan. I'm like, how do you want this guy is a vicious sociopath.
These are
at that point. And yet people loved him. Women loved him. And why?
They're textbook cult leaders. Textbook cult leaders. I'm watching The Vow right now on HBO about the Nexium cult and how one person can just inspire thousands to join their dumb cause. And it's all about charm and sounding like you know what you're talking about. And that's what the governor and Negan both share.
Yeah, I kind of cosplay as Negan. I do
Kind of?
Darth Negan.
Darth Negan.
Once I figured out how to build the lightsaber baseball bat, I was like, oh, I've got to do this. Normally I do heroes.
That's
I like
amazing.
heroes.
That is cool. I'd like to see that.
Yes, me too.
I was going to do it today, but I didn't want to do my hair.
Wow. Next time.
We have another question. Once the original series has ended, what do you see as the longevity of Fear the Walking Dead? This is from Adrian. How long do you think Fear is going to last once the flagship show is gone?
I'm going to guess Fear goes to 7 seasons and wraps up. I don't have any inside information on that. It's just my feeling.
What season are they on now?
They're starting
about to start
6, and they still have contracts through 7. So
They won't want it to end at the same time as The Walking Dead, though.
it would, yeah, I don't know. I can see.
Well,
you gotta-
I'd like to see
a World Beyond. You were mentioning how it's a 2-year kind of
Mhm.
mark for the World
Yeah.
Beyond. So you got to think now. So the World Beyond would have a year past the end of The Walking Dead, I believe. So
Well,
It'll be close because there's
No,
No.
because
tonight.
so Walking Dead's going to wrap up end of 2022. They're going to split the season into 3. So there'll be like season 11C, which is crazy to think about. And so that end of 2022. So if World Beyond goes from now, it'll finish up this November. They haven't shot season 2 yet, so they'll shoot that next year. I think it might coincide. It'll probably end earlier. I think their original plan was to have World Beyond lead straight into the Rick movie. But now everything has been thrown, out of whack because of COVID. All the programming schedules. I mean, season 11 was supposed to be the premiere was supposed to be tonight pretty much, but they haven't even begun shooting that. That's not till next year. So who knows what'll happen.
Yeah, I doubt they'd want Fear to end at the same time as those. So
yeah,
even if they have to replace Alicia on Fear the Walking Dead. Well, she and Coleman Domingo, they're the only ones originally left from the first. No, wait, we've got
Daniel.
We've got Daniel. He's back. So we've got 3 from the first year of the show, and they want some of them to stick around to have some continuation of the show. Because I still say Madison's alive.
And that's what we talked about earlier. And I guess it's also going to rely on the ratings. Listen, they're not going to end anything if it's on strong ratings. Period.
Yeah, it was AMC's decision to end The Walking Dead. They've said this week. AMC was who decided it, which can coincide with the end of the comic book, and it is an expensive show. It is a complicated show with all that much cast. If they've pulling this together in this world right now, let's cut it down to where it's just Daryl and Kara, where we really don't have to worry about these 2 actors, in case we go into pandemic year 4.
Yeah, I think the cast is a big reason why they're ending after season 11 is because they have such a great ensemble, but all these actors are being pulled in different directions with different projects. Rick decided to leave. I mean, if he hadn't decided to leave, there would not have been him blowing up and going to the movies. Michonne decided to leave, so they had to write that into it. Other people, I'm sure, have other things that they'd like to do. And it's just becoming more difficult, I think, for them to keep all that cast together.
Story-wise, I think it's a good place to end. Even aside from coinciding with the end of the story in the comics. It's like you've got it where they've built something up to where, what do you do now? Do you just tear it down all over again? I think it's a good point for them, because we've still got a lot of story ahead of us. There are whole series that don't last nearly as long as the remaining number of episodes.
From what I've heard, specifically from Brandon Davis of Comic Book, he was telling me that if they were to do a season 12, everyone's contracts, a lot of people's contracts would have gone up like 5% or something. And they would have had to pay everyone a lot more if they added another season. But if they squeeze it all into season 11, they don't have to do that. And it's fucked up, but that's TV, baby. And that's how it works.
The world.
So, but creatively, it's good. I mean, the Commonwealth story arc, I think, is a season or a season and a half worth. I mean, it's each season they cover about 20 issues of the comics, and we're at 170 now. The comic went to 193. So, spreading Commonwealth into 2 seasons, I think, would have been a stretch. You would have had an all-out war situation where it's like, this story is going on too long in the show, so let's just, compress it a little bit. So I'm happy
to alter some of those characters who are at the Commonwealth already to have somebody who's a bit more of a charismatic villain for what's left.
I will not be surprised if we see Jane Atkinson again. They're also going to have to cast her son Sebastian, who's a shitbag, and excuse my French, and that could be interesting. We'll see.
And they need to alter him also because he's a bit too much like Deanna's son Spencer in the comic book. He's too similar to him, so there's another reason to alter the depiction of him.
Or even like Troy in Fear the Walking Dead season 3, to the 2 people out there who know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, let him show up and oh, Deanna found her son Troy.
Oh yeah.
Well, looks like we're getting a little short on time, but I would like people to shamelessly plug their stuff. So we're going to go ahead and start with you, Travis.
I am Dr. Travis Langley, best known as the author of the book Batman and Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night, the best book on Batman ever written by me, the editor and head nerd of the herd on a series of other books, a dozen others. That series began with The Walking Dead Psychology, Psych of the Living Dead. And most recently, since I got to plug something, actually, newest one, the latest is The Joker Psychology, Evil Clowns, and the Women Who Love Them.
Wow.
At Superherologist on Twitter.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Neil?
I am the author of the Exit Zero Zombie Trilogy, where the zombie apocalypse begins in New Jersey. So the first book was Exit Zero. The second book, Nuke Jersey. Welcome to Nuke Jersey. And
That's a good title.
Book, Zombie Democracy. And the last book that just came out at the very end of 2019, and I started promoting in the very beginning of 2020, is Business is Dead, Resurrecting Entrepreneurship, all about people who were launched into their very first entrepreneurship due to their fandom of The Walking Dead. So people that were not looking to be entrepreneurs, that just wanted to be part of the Walking Dead universe. And you can find me at businessisdead.com. That's businessisdead.com, and at Exit Zero Zombie on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Exit Zero Zombie spelled out.
Okay, so that book has nothing to do with the state of the economy today. Good to know. All right, Johnny.
Oh man, not as impressive as these guys. I run social media for The Walking Dead, so if you're not already following at The Walking Dead, go do that. I'm at Johnny Odell. I do not only the social media, but we do the React compilations, which the governor is a part of, and always a good, supporter of that. We also do a lot of deep dive videos on YouTube. If I'm going to plug any book, it's this one I wrote. I don't know if a lot of people have heard of it. It's called Great Expectations. It's pretty underrated. They spelled my name wrong, so I'm not going to show you the author name, but it's me. So go pick that up if you can find it. That's about it.
It sounds vaguely familiar. And
Yeah.
I am known as the Governor, also Kyle Williamson. I am with Fandom Spotlight and the host of The Governor Reacts, which I do full reactions to the episodes of The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. And I do show up in Johnny's wonderful compilations on Skybound quite a bit, which I appreciate, Johnny.
Hey, of course.
I am also author of the book Elements of Cosplay, The Costume and Beyond, which can be found on Amazon. I do not have a copy of the book with me. Wasn't planning. And I do have a good friend named Herschel. But you can find Phantom Spotlight at phantomspotlightlite.com or Phantom Spotlight on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where we have over 800 videos and lots of stuff with me, the Governor. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining me for this wonderful discussion. Oh, tune in tonight about 15 minutes after the finale for the Governor Reacts 10x16. So my reaction to that particular episode, since like Johnny, I saw it too, but there will be spoilers, so watch the episode first. And we will see everyone next time. Be sure to go to Wizard World Vault, and thanks to Wizard World for bringing us on. And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody. Governor, out.
Thank you so much.